A faint sound, moan. Silas pulled the reins, listening closely. The sound came again, raspy, broken. He urged his horse forward, circling around a low ridge of rocks, and then he saw it. In the middle of the clearing, two wooden stakes had been driven deep into the sand. An Apache girl was tied tightly to them. Her arms were stretched out to the sides, her legs bound in the opposite direction, forcing her body into a painful position for what must have been a very long time. Her figure slumped forward, muscles locked, her entire body trembling slightly from exhaustion. Blood had dried into dark streaks around her wrists and ankles. Silas said nothing. He just stood there, staring. For a moment, the image overlapped with an old memory, another girl, eyes pleading, and the silence he had chosen back then. The Apache girl opened her eyes at the sound of hooves. Her gaze was blurry but still aware. "You should not be here," she whispered. Silas dismounted. He stepped closer, drawing a knife from his belt. The ropes creaked and groaned under tension as the blade met them. This time, he would not stand by and do nothing. If this story stirred up any memories of the past for you, feel free to subscribe to the channel so we can keep sitting together like this again and again. The ropes snapped as Silas Boone's blade cut through. The Apache girl's body collapsed forward like a broken tree. Silas caught her just in time, before her head hit the sand. She was frighteningly light. The muscles that had been stretched for so long now trembled in waves, as if they no longer knew what to do once released. Silas untied the remaining ropes from her wrists and ankles, where deep, purple welts had formed on her skin. "Stay with me," he said quietly. She did not respond, only breathed heavily. Silas laid her sideways across the saddle, then rode back to his cabin, which was nearly 1 mile away. The small wooden house stood alone in a clearing, with no neighbors, no voices, just the wind and the creaking of the door hinges. He placed her gently on the bed and lit an oil lamp. The soft yellow light revealed the full extent of the cruelty someone had inflicted on her. The carved wounds on her body were still oozing blood. Swollen patches of skin stretched across her shoulders and hips. When Silas touched her shoulder to check for a dislocated joint, her body jolted. "Slow down," she gasped, her breath quickening. "It still hurts." Silas immediately pulled his hand back. He had seen battlefield wounds before, but this was a different kind of pain. Pain deliberately inflicted, stretched out over time to break a person's will. "I will be more gentle," he said, his voice lower. He soaked a cloth in warm water and carefully cleaned each wound. Every time his hand touched her skin, she clenched her jaw, trying not to cry out again. After a while, she opened her eyes. The panic was gone, replaced by caution. "What is your name?" Silas asked. "Ayanna Redbird." He nodded. "Who did this to you?" She was silent for a few seconds. Then she spoke, each word deliberate. "Nathan Crowell." "My stepfather." Silas froze. "He is working with Marshal Virgil Haynes," she continued. "They forged land deeds, stole Apache land. I found out. They needed me to stay quiet." She took a breath and added, her voice growing colder. "They accused me of stealing silver, but they are not afraid of me holding a gun." She looked straight at him. "They are afraid of paperwork." Silas felt old memories rising. His brother, falsely accused, and no one had believed him either. "So what do you plan to do?" he asked. Ayanna looked up at the wooden ceiling, her gaze sharpening. "We are going to make them fear the very thing they are trying to hide." Night fell slowly and heavily around Silas Boone's cabin. The wind whipped against the wooden walls, carrying with it the scent of distant rain. Ayanna had fallen asleep from sheer exhaustion, but her hands still clutched the edge of the blanket, as if afraid that letting go would make everything disappear. Silas sat at the wooden table, wide awake. He watched the oil lamp flicker, and the past came rushing back. Many years ago, his brother had stood in the middle of the town square, accused of stealing. No investigation. No one asked why. Silas was young then, still believed that truth could defend itself. He had stayed silent. 3 days later, his brother was found in the old barn, hanging by the neck from a ceiling beam. No trial. No apology. Only silence. Silas clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. "I did nothing," he whispered. A soft creak came from the wooden floor behind him. Ayanna had woken up, pushing herself upright even though her body still trembled slightly. "You lost someone," she said. It was not a question. Silas did not turn to her right away. "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Then you understand." Silas turned to look at her. In the dim light, the wounds on her body no longer looked like signs of weakness. They looked like marks left on someone who had just walked through fire. "If I take you far from here," he said slowly, "they will keep stealing land from your people, and you will never come back." Ayanna nodded. "But if we stay," Silas continued, "they will come after both of us." She looked him straight in the eye. "How many years have you lived alone, Silas Boone?" He did not answer. "We do not need a shootout," she said. "Nathan and Marshall Haynes are powerful because they control paperwork. The county office keeps carbon copies of the land deeds. If we can get a real copy and send it to Denver." Silas finished the sentence. She nodded. "The federal government cannot ignore it if we have proof." Silas stood and walked to the window. On the horizon, dark clouds were gathering. "The storm will hit by tomorrow night," he said. "In the rain, the town will not see clearly." Ayanna slowly stood, even though her shoulders still ached. "Then we have one night." Silas looked at her again. She was no longer the girl tied between two wooden stakes. She was now someone who had chosen not just to seek justice, but to demand it. "This time," he said quietly, "I will not stay silent." Outside, the first thunder rolled in the distance like a promise that the coming storm would carry more than just rain. Word spread faster than the storm rolling in. By the next morning, a cattleman passed through the clearing where the two wooden stakes had once stood. All he found were cut ropes and dried blood. No body. By noon, Nathan Crowell had heard. He stood in the middle of Marshall Virgil Haynes's office, his face cold as stone. "I carved those marks into her myself," he said. "She is not supposed to exist." Marshall Haynes did not respond right away. He simply looked out the window. "If she is still alive," he said slowly, "then she will speak." Nathan clenched his fists. "Then find her." The search order was issued before sundown. At the cabin more than 1 mile from town, Silas Boone was cleaning his rifle. He did not enjoy using it, but he had no illusions. Ayanna stood by the window, watching the dirt road that led to the property. Her shoulders still ached, but her eyes were nothing like they had been that first night. "No more panic, only focus. You do not need to teach me how to shoot," she said. Silas glanced at her. "I am not teaching you to kill. I am teaching you to survive." He handed her his old revolver. "Keep your wrist straight. Do not lock your elbow too tight." She raised the gun, wincing as her shoulder stretched. "Slow down," Silas reminded. "Your body is not healed yet." She exhaled slowly, adjusted her stance. The first shot rang out, striking the tree trunk a few steps away. Not perfect, but close enough. Silas nodded. Late in the afternoon, they saw a faint dust cloud on the horizon. Two riders passed down the dirt road, not stopping, but their eyes scanned the area. Nathan had begun the hunt. "The storm will arrive by tomorrow night," Silas said, looking up at the darkening sky. "We have only one chance." Ayanna turned to him. "If I get caught again, I will not let that happen." She did not argue. She just nodded. As night fell, thunder began to rumble in the distance. The rain had not yet come, but the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and iron. Ayanna sat at the table, spreading out coarse paper. She wrote down every detail she could remember about the land deed dates, signatures, seals. Her handwriting was steady, unwavering. Silas watched her in silence. "Are you afraid?" she asked suddenly. Silas did not take long to answer. "Yes," she nodded. "Me too." Outside, lightning tore across the sky. The storm was coming, and this time, it would bring more than just rain. The storm hit just as the town's lights came on. Rain hammered the rooftops like thousands of tiny stones. Thunder rolled so hard it shook the ground. The streets were nearly empty, just a few figures rushing to the safety of porches to escape the downpour. Silas and Ayanna stopped their horses at the edge of town. "I will draw attention from the north," Silas said quietly. "You go in through the back of the storage building." Ayanna nodded. No wasted words. She pulled up her hood and slipped into the dark alley leading toward the county office. The rain masked her footsteps, and the wind covered the creak of the door as she gently pushed it open. Inside was pitch black, except for the flicker of an oil lamp near the desk. Marshall Haynes's office was always kept locked, but Ayanna knew the rear window never shut properly. She crawled through, heart pounding but mind sharp. Stacks of ledgers lined the shelves. She found the right one, land deeds for the area east of the river. Her fingers flipped quickly through the pages until she found her father's name. There. But the signature was wrong. The seal was unusually faded. She yanked open the drawer beneath the desk and pulled out the carbon copies. The old ink was still clear on them, undeniable proof. Suddenly, the front door burst open. "Someone's in here!" a man shouted. Ayanna clutched the bundle of papers, heart racing. A shadow stretched across the wall as lightning flashed. Outside, a gunshot rang out. Silas. He had fired at the signpost at the top of the street, drawing the guards' attention. 2 riders sped north, leaving 1 man to run into the office. Ayanna knew she had no time left. She knocked over the oil lamp on the desk. Flames leapt up, catching on a pile of spare papers in the corner. "Damn it!" the man yelled. In that brief moment of chaos, Ayanna dove through the back window, landing hard in the muddy alley. Her shoulder screamed in pain, but she did not stop. Silas emerged from the rain, pulling her up onto the horse. "Did you get it?" he asked. Ayanna held up the bundle of papers, soaked but intact. "Yes." Behind them, the fire bell rang out, fast and frantic. Nathan Crowell burst from the saloon, staring toward the smoke rising from the county office. His eyes locked onto 2 silhouettes galloping into the storm. "After them!" he roared. And so the hunt began, no longer the pursuit of a girl in chains, but the pursuit of a truth, fleeing the town in the heart of a storm. The horse thundered through the mud, iron hooves pounding the wet earth in a rapid, sharp rhythm. Rain lashed Ayanna's face like icy whips. Behind them, shouts mixed with the roar of thunder. "To the right!" Silas shouted. 2 bullets ripped through the air, grazing past their ears and slamming into a tree ahead. Nathan Crowell led the chase, his face flushed red in the lightning's glare. "He is not going to stop," Ayanna said through labored breaths. "Neither will we," Silas replied. A loud crack rang out behind them. Silas flinched, his left shoulder jerked violently. The bullet had grazed him, tearing through his coat and cutting a long line across his skin. "You are hit!" Ayanna cried out. "Just a scratch," he gritted his teeth. "Do not look back." But Ayanna was already turning in the saddle. She raised the gun, aiming through the sheets of rain. Her arms still ached from the days she had been bound. But she did not hesitate. 1 shot. A rider behind them staggered, his horse rearing back, not to kill, just to slow them down. The road ahead led to a small telegraph station near the railway line. The faint glow from its window was their only hope. Silas pushed the horse faster. They reached the front of the telegraph office with the sound of galloping hooves no more than 100 steps behind. Ayanna leapt down first, bursting through the door. The telegraph operator, a thin man with round spectacles, jumped to his feet. "What?" She slapped the rain-soaked papers onto the desk. "Send this to Denver, right now." He looked at the pages, then toward the door, where the gunfire was drawing closer. "I cannot." Nathan Crowell. Silas entered, gun in hand. Blood dripped from his shoulder onto the wooden floor. "Yes, you can," Silas said calmly, "or you will have to live with the fact that you saw everything and did nothing." A flash of lightning lit up Ayanna's face. She was no longer the girl tied between 2 wooden stakes. She was someone ready to stand tall, even after nearly being broken. The telegraph operator swallowed hard, then turned to the machine. Clicking sounds began, steady, urgent. Outside, Nathan Crowell dismounted, gun drawn. He stepped closer to the door. "Get out here!" he roared. "That girl is a criminal." Ayanna looked at Silas. "How much longer?" "Just until it is sent," he answered. The telegraph kept clicking. Nathan kicked the door open. As he stepped inside, the machine suddenly fell silent. The telegraph operator looked up. "The message has been sent," he said. His voice trembled, but it was clear. In that moment, Nathan understood it was not the sound of gunfire that meant he had lost. It was the sound of that machine. Nathan Crowell did not get the chance to speak again before the sound of hooves echoed from the east, not from the town. 1 horse, then many. Steady, heavy, disciplined. Nathan turned. Marshal Virgil Haynes took a step back as deep blue uniforms emerged through the rain. A line of federal cavalry advanced down the muddy road, rifles held upright, horses moving in solid, deliberate strides. The man in front pulled a document from his rain-soaked coat. "Marshal Virgil Haynes?" he called out. Haynes swallowed hard. "Yes, you are requested to cooperate in an investigation ordered by Denver regarding allegations of forged land deeds and unlawful seizure of indigenous property." Nathan let out a dry laugh. This is a misunderstanding. That girl is a criminal. Ayanna stepped out from the shadows of the telegraph office. The rain had softened, but her hair still clung to her face, her shoulders still bandaged. "Then, would you care to explain your signature on these copies?" she asked. She held out the bundle of papers, now kept dry by the telegraph operator. The federal officer took them, scanned a few lines, then looked back at Nathan. His expression no longer held doubt, only procedure. "Nathan Kroll, you are being taken into custody pending investigation of fraud and abuse of authority." Haynes tried to speak, but two soldiers stepped forward, seizing his arms. No gunfire. No duels. Only the sound of metal cuffs closing. The rain stopped completely as dawn crested behind the hills. The gray sky shifted to pale orange. Silas leaned against the wall of the telegraph station, his shoulder crudely bandaged. He watched Ayanna step out of the shadows and stand in the middle of the wet dirt road. The two wooden stakes where she had once been tied still stood at the edge of the desert, darkened by rain. "You did it," Silas said. Ayanna shook her head gently. "We did." The Apache from the surrounding area began to gather as word spread. There were no cheers. They simply stood there, silent, as if afraid that any loud sound might shatter what had just occurred. An old woman stepped forward and placed a hand on Ayanna's shoulder. No words were spoken, but her eyes carried something this town rarely gave acknowledgement. Silas watched in silence. He used to think justice only came with a bang. But this time, it came with the click of cuffs and the tapping of a telegraph machine in the middle of a storm. And as the sun rose higher, Ayanna turned toward the two wooden stakes. "We should finish this," she said softly. Silas nodded, this time not to cut the ropes, but to burn what once bound her. The two wooden stakes were pulled down that afternoon. Silas swung the axe with firm, steady strokes, while Ayanna gathered the old ropes into a small pile. There was no anger, no tears, just something that needed to be done. When the fire rose, the stakes burned into blackened charcoal in the wide, open desert. The place where she had nearly died was now nothing but ash. Ayanna stood and watched the flames until they were completely gone. "My father used to say," she spoke, "the land does not hold bad memories. People do." Silas stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets. He was about to say goodbye, as he had done so many times in his life. He had always been the one to leave once things were made right. Staying had always scared him. "I will head north," he said at last. "Plenty of ranches still need a good hand." Ayanna did not look at him right away. She took a few steps on the still, warm, blackened sand, then turned back. "Do you always leave when things are just beginning?" Silas could not answer right away. A soft breeze swept across the clearing. No more ropes, just the two of them standing in the shifting colors of the afternoon. "I do not need saving anymore," Ayanna said quietly, "but I want you to stay." It was not a plea. It was an invitation. Silas looked into her eyes, no longer the girl tied between two wooden stakes, but a woman who had rebuilt her family's ranch, who helped Apache children learn to read, to write, and to stand tall. He nodded. Their wedding was simple, held beneath a cottonwood tree near the stream. No loud music, no celebratory gunfire. Just handshakes, quiet nods, and eyes full of respect. Time passed slowly, but steadily. 1 year later, the sound of laughter echoed across what had once been dead land. Their little boy stumbled through the sand, his tiny hands reaching for his father. Silas scooped him up, while Ayanna stood nearby, watching the two men in her life beneath the golden evening light. The place that had once symbolized destruction had become the beginning of a family. Justice had arrived through paper and courage, but what kept it there was love, the kind that needed no guns, no storms, only two people willing to stay. And on that blazing red desert, life chose not to leave anymore. 18 years later, with Silas's hair turned completely white and his hands no longer steady as they once were, people still spoke of the night the storm swept through that small town. But not because of the gunfire, not because of the arrests. They remembered it because that was the night two ordinary people chose not to look away. In the Wild West, the law was once as fragile as rain-soaked paper. But it was that very paper, when upheld by truth, that changed the fate of an entire community. Silas had learned the lesson he once ignored in his youth. Silence in the face of injustice is a choice, and often the wrong one. Ayanna did not win with brute strength. She won with the courage to speak the truth, even when her body still ached, even when the whole town turned its back. And Silas, A man who once believed he had lived too long to change, proved that it is never too late to stand on the side of what is right. For those who have lived through decades, this story is not about revenge. It is a reminder that honor is not measured by how strong we are, but by who we protect when they are at their weakest. Family is not always born of blood. Sometimes, it begins with the decision to stay, and where once stood two wooden stakes of cruelty, there is now the sound of children laughing, because when one generation dares to face the truth, the next can grow up without having to bow their heads. The story you have just followed includes fictionalized elements, brought to life with the help of artificial intelligence. We invite you to listen with discernment and your own sense of connection. These fictional details are not meant to rewrite history, but to evoke the spirit of the old American frontier, a place where people lived through harsh realities, made impossible choices, and accepted the price of those decisions. Through this story, I simply hope to share a few enduring lessons about compassion, love, and courage, things that still matter, even as time moves on. Thank you for giving your precious time to this story. On this journey of life, sharing moments like this is something truly worth cherishing. If you enjoyed the story, leave a number 1 and subscribe to the channel if you would like to hear more. It has been a pleasure to serve you, dear listeners of True Wild West Stories.